Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Good? Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is State Representative Sean Scanlon, and I represent the 98th District, which is the towns of Guilford and Brantford. And I'm very excited and glad to be joined by a great and bipartisan group of Shoreline elected officials, both state legislators, my colleagues, and municipal first selectmen, here to talk about Shoreline East. Yesterday, the Department of Transportation announced that they were going to be holding public hearings on scaling back service and eliminating, as of July 1, all weekend and off-peak service on the Shoreline East rail line. Our towns collectively represent towns that are serviced by Shoreline East, and our message today to the Department of Transportation is we want you to rethink these cuts and to rescind these cuts because of how important Shoreline East is, not just in terms of public transportation for serving our constituents to get them to and from work especially, but also for economic development. And our first selectman today will talk about how important Shoreline East has been to economic development in their communities. And we're here just today to say on behalf of our constituents that Shoreline East is such a vital resource for the shoreline part of Connecticut. And we really want to fight to keep this open for as long as possible because ridership is increasing. Every single day, almost 2,000 people take these trains. Some of these folks do not work typical 9 to 5 hours. I have a lot of constituents who have contacted me that work other shifts at Yale New Haven Hospital, nurses, for example, who like to ride this train because it's safe. They get right on the train, they get right back to their car here, and they're worried about what's going to happen if we get rid of off-peak service. Professors, students, security guards, police officers, firefighters, these are the folks that ride this train to and from work, and they do it at different hours of the day. Eliminating off-peak service will have a tremendous impact on them. Lastly, before I kick it off to other folks, just a word about weekend service. If you come down here on a Saturday or Sunday, you will see families that are getting their kids on this train to go into New Haven, to go into New York City, to watch a show, to go to a sporting event. This is exactly what we should be promoting, is folks to come here to understand, the value of this, and they do understand it, which is why you're seeing the ridership go up. You look at a place like Brantford, Jamie Cosgrove, our first selectman, is not here today, but I represent Brantford. Last year, Senator Kennedy and I and Representative Reed secured $250,000 of state money to explore transit-oriented development in that neighborhood. You have a booming Stony Creek Brewery, you have housing going in there, a hotel is coming in there, and we just built a brand new train station. What message does it send to spend all that money, invest all those resources to say that we're going to scale back this important service? I think it sends the wrong message, and that's why we're excited to be here today with a great coalition of Democrats and Republicans to say, save the Shoreline East. Next, I'll turn it over to Representative Devin Carney, who is the ranking member of the Transportation Committee.
Thank you, everyone, for coming here today. Thank you, Sean, for organizing this. I'm very happy to be part of this bipartisan effort to preserve the Shoreline East off-peak and weekend service. One of the things that Representative Scanlon said that can't be said enough is the investment that has already been made. Old Saybrook a few years ago got a new train station recently, got additional parking put in, paid for with state funds. Westbrook, Connecticut just got a new train station a couple of years ago. So it makes no sense to invest all of this time, money, and effort into Shoreline East and then to turn around and say, let's cut that service. I know in my neck of the woods, Lyme, Old Saybrook, and Westbrook, a lot of folks do use this service for work to go into New Haven, or I'm not sure if anyone is here from east of the Connecticut River, but they also use it to go into New London. I know New London is heavily dependent on its rail service. They're looking at the Coast Guard Museum, for example, is something that's a hot topic in the city of New London, and they are dependent on that rail service for folks to go into New London. So it is New London and New Haven, which are two important cities to the state of Connecticut and really important economic drivers for the state of Connecticut. Folks use this to go to work, but they also use it for tourism. I know I've taken the Shoreline East many times to go to New Haven and then on to New York. It saves time, it's efficient, it saves money. So I really think it's such an important asset. Old Saybrook, for example, just built brand new luxury apartments there, and I don't think those would have been built if that Shoreline East new rail station hadn't been built. And those apartments, from what I've told, have been rented very quickly, and it's because it's near that train station. And it's what folks want. You know, you go into other states like Massachusetts, and they have a booming a public transit system, particularly with rail, and I think it just sends the wrong message to take what we already have, all of this investment, and just to say, we're just going to forget about that. So I think the DOT really needs to reconsider it, and I would just urge everyone who uses this service, whether it's for work, whether it's for tourism, whatever, to email the DOT. You can contact your state representatives, but email the DOT or call them or show up at one of these public hearings and tell them to save this important service on Shoreline East. Thank you very much.
Next up is State Senator Ted Kennedy.
Well, I'll be very brief. I think Devin and Sean have outlined the important reasons why we need to preserve and protect this service, Shoreline East service. I'm Ted Kennedy Jr. I'm the state senator for the Shoreline, and our state needs to be investing more in commuter rail service, not less. We know that commuter rail service is the lifeblood of our state, and we're here to say we value this service, and we think that the DOT should reverse this decision to cut back on this service. In fact, I want to propose that we actually increase service so that people can make even more connections and development can continue. So I just want to echo the thoughts of Sean and Devin, and I'm pleased to be here in a bipartisan way with so many of my colleagues to highlight the important part of Shoreline East. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Noreen Kokaruta, State Representative, 101st, Madison and Durham. You know, it was almost 30 years ago that, we started Shoreline East, and I remember a lot of people saying, well, maybe to go to Metro North in New York, but people will never give up their cars. And the part we forget about is all the conversation about our congested highways. It's 2,000 cars we're keeping off the road. And for those of us who live in this part of the state, those 2 lanes just aren't doing it. And so Madison's one of those towns too that's really looking at transit development. We've been fortunate enough to get 2 grants. We're working with a private developer. We want to make this work for Madison. Here's the state investing so much money. We have a success story where we should be building on, and as Senator Kennedy said, we should be adding, not taking away. So we're here today really to urge the governor to really rescind any suggestion of cutting these services to the shoreline and to anyone who uses Shoreline East. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome the legislators as well as my fellow elected officials to Guilford. This is a wonderful community, but take a look at what's behind us. Look at what the state has done. Look at what we have done to ensure that our citizens have access to alternative transportation to get to work and beyond. So thank you for coming today. As elected officials, we are all too familiar with the budgetary challenges from the state. We have all seen cuts to critical state funding for municipalities and agree that new revenue sources are required to protect vital rail and bus services. However, the proposed reduction to the Shoreline East services is distressing on several levels. Many Guilford residents have embraced the service and depend on its continued viability as commuters to jobs and cultural centers in New Haven and beyond, thereby reducing congestion on an already overburdened highway and easing parking capacity challenges at Union Station in New Haven. Efficient transportation alternatives are directly linked to Connecticut's economic vitality, as evidenced in multiple studies and previous decisions by our elected officials, evidenced in what we have here today. The state has made significant investments in the Shoreline East infrastructure, and that should not be abandoned, and all alternatives to maintain and grow this vital service should be considered. Locally, Guilford has adopted a transit-oriented development plan based on the continued availability of these services. Within about 1,000 yards, there are 2 or 3 parcels that are currently being developed as a result of the opportunity to provide this kind of rail access. Economically healthy shoreline communities benefit the region as a whole, including our distressed cities, through increased contributions to state income and sales taxes. I urge the administration and our legislative colleagues here today to refrain from making any cuts to the service. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Al Goldberg, Madison, the Senior Town Selectman. Transportation is vital to the infrastructure of our lives. The ability to move about freely is the key to our economy, gives us access to our workplaces, enables us to stay in touch with family and friends, fosters our very sense of freedom, and connects us to the community that we call Connecticut. As road congestion and travel costs continue to mount, Shoreline residents increasingly rely on Shoreline East railroad services. A decline in this service will inevitably lead to an increase in road traffic along the already maxed out I-95 corridor. We urge state government and high officials to follow our long-term policy and continue to develop mass transit in the area. Thank you.
Noel Bishop, First Selectman of Westbrook. One of the things that's not been said, but I think we all know in our towns and all of our legislators know, this state is losing population. And one of the reasons it's losing it is housing and jobs and so on and so forth. But in our town, and I'm sure it's true in many towns, when you look at why people are not coming to our towns or why they're leaving, there's many reasons. But one of the things that is encouraging is when we build train stations, and our train station is almost a duplicate in Westbrook or what in Guilford, is the fact that people look for mass transit. They look for ways that they can commute to work. So if we lose this rail service, it affects not only our economy, but it affects our ability to attract people to our town and come to our wonderful school system. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. State Representative Jesse McLaughlin. I represent Westbrook, Quincy, and Killingworth. My father used to bring me to school as a kid growing up, and he used to tell me the favorite part of his day was getting on the highway and seeing everyone getting to work, and how much it encouraged him, how hard people in our country work. And the economy has changed, as you know. Millennials are living in suburban or rural areas, need access to transit-oriented development to get into their jobs in the cities. And I'm so proud to be here with my colleagues to send a strong message and encouragement to the DOT to let's help these folks get to work. Let's make the economy move smoother and not slow it down. Now's not the time to make cuts to infrastructure that's going to help people get to work, that's going to help the folks in Clinton and Westbrook and Killingworth get to work. So thank you for being here. Please contact the DOT and let them know how damaging this can be to our economy.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. My name is Carl Fortuna from Old Saybrook. I'm the first selectman there, and I'm representing one of the stations along Shoreline East with the highest ridership going into New Haven, both on the weekends and during the week. I can tell you right now that Old Saybrook for the last 10 years has been working to develop the area in and surrounding the train station. There was a 10-acre parcel where the state actually worked with a private developer to put in 199 spaces and partnered with that developer to give up space that they were going to make parking spaces, and is now developed into transit-oriented developed housing. There's 186 apartment units there that are full, and if you don't think those people are relying on the train, you're wrong. The other thing that was so important, and we worked so hard to develop this parking and this TOD, is for the economy of Old Saybrook's Main Street. This is all walking distance. And in doing so, we applied for a grant, and we received from the state a $1.3 million local transportation capital improvement program grant. And we were able to redo our North Main Street with about a half a mile of sidewalks that perfectly connects now our gateway train station and TOD development to our downtown. I can tell you that cutting back on Shoreline East service will affect Old Saybrook, it will affect those apartments, it will affect our downtown economy, and I'm urging DOT, please, to reconsider these reductions. It's very important to not only some of the other local economies, but certainly to Old Saybrook's local economy. So Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kathy Eno from Killingworth. We don't have our own train station, but we definitely use the Shoreline East. I use the Shoreline East, and we, more importantly, recognize that we are part of the regional economy and the state economy. And as long as the state doesn't improve its infrastructure and its public transportation, the state economy is not going to grow, and we are all going to suffer. So that's all I want to say to you.
Good morning. My name is Sam Gold. I'm the Executive Director of the Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Governments. And I'm here joined by our legislators and our first selectman to oppose the cuts to Shoreline East and to the other transit services in the state of Connecticut. In addition to cuts to Shoreline East, we're looking at major cuts to funding to our bus companies, which connect to Shoreline East and connect people to jobs, to education, and to opportunity. This is the time that we should be expanding transit options, not cutting them, and really to take advantage of the many, many years of investments that we've put towards this train line, whether it be our new beautiful stations along the train line, parking lots, private development, public money that has been put in to connect the train stations to our communities. It's a very awkward time that the state is preparing to ramp up a new commuter rail service to Hartford, while at the same time is reducing service on Shoreline East and the branch lines to Metro North. I know that's not intentional, but it is a real issue, and we need to protect this line for the people who depend on it on a day-to-day basis. Not everyone works a regular 9-to-5 schedule, and off-peak service and weekend service is essential, and particularly in the summers when traffic on this part of 95 gets really bad. Anyway, I urge the General Assembly, our legislators, the governor, to work together and find a solution to this and to the deficits in the Special Transportation Fund, and thank you very much.
That concludes the speaking program, but we're happy to take any questions if folks have them.
Sean, can you talk a little bit about what sort of, what the reasoning is for the governor? We're talking $60 million. Can you just shed some light on that a little bit?
So in the last few weeks, I think you've seen some cut announcements from the DOT, whether it's for projects that were already underway here in our communities now, these cuts. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Special Transportation Fund is in dire shape. I won't speak for everyone here. I think that we're going to spend a lot of time in this legislative session talking about that issue and trying to figure out if there's a way that we can try to get more stabilization into that fund. But I think that what we're trying to say today is that, yes, we understand that there are tough challenges that we face at the state level, and we understand the pressure that DOT is under. But we, as representatives of constituents that live in this area, know how important this service is to them, and really believe that eliminating this service or cutting it back in any way is a grave mistake, and we want to figure out with them, maybe partners with them, to figure out how we can maintain this service and our other obligations during this climate.
I'm hearing a lot, obviously, of concern over the service cuts, but a lot of your constituents that I spoke with today, they're really concerned about the fare hikes, too. How do you feel about the fare hikes? Are you supporting them so that you can continue to have the service?
So I haven't seen specifically what they are proposing in terms of fare hikes. I think it just came out yesterday, and we were spending a lot of time trying to get this event together. I serve on the Transportation Committee, along with many of the folks that are up here today, and I will absolutely be taking a look at what their fare hikes are and attending the public hearings and listening to my constituents to see what that impact would have on them. But today's focus really is about the importance of Shoreline East and what that means to them. And yes, fare hikes are certainly not anything that anybody wants. We want to maintain the service in general, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
So would you support a fare hike?
I'd have to see what it would be. I mean, I don't know, what the percentage increase would be. I'd have to talk to folks about what that impact would be on their pocketbooks and wallets, and to see from DOT, are they saying that a fare hike would allow them to maintain the service? That's not what I'm hearing today. I'm hearing that they're saying they want fare hikes and to get rid of the service. So I think it's a conversation that's very early, but we're here today to talk about Shoreline East. Anyone else
What
can
is the
check.
relationship, Sean, between imposing tolls on state roads and this problem?
I think that the conversation about tolls that we'll be having is a part of this conversation. I think the governor is going to come out later today with an announcement of what his plan is to try to bolster the Special Transportation Fund. But we, as legislators, will have to have our own conversation about that, and that work begins in earnest a week from today when our legislative session begins for the 2018 year. But the conversation about tolls is a conversation that I'm sure will be on our agenda this year.
It seems tolls have gained some momentum during the last legislative session, and if tolls were to be reinstituted on our highways here in Connecticut, that might be even all the more reason to make sure that this service isn't reduced.
Yeah, I think there's probably a broad opinion of tolls in this group, so I won't speak. I won't speak for all my colleagues here. But I think that this is a conversation we have to have. This is a conversation that our constituents want us to have. They want us to figure out how to declog the highways. They want to figure out how we can get folks on trains. They want to figure out how they can live and work and enjoy life with the ability to hop on a train and go with some friends to the Stony Creek Brewery, which is a great place right off a train line that they can meet their friends at. So these are all conversations we have to have. But we've heard loud and clear from our constituents that this train line is so important, and that's why we're all here today in the freezing cold talking.
I just want to add the questions about tolls is one thing to keep in mind is if we do reinstitute tolls, that money will be protected federally. What's important to go along if tolls are reinstituted is that the Special Transportation Fund has a lockbox, a secure lockbox around it to protect things like this. One of the things that's concerning, because if you have tolls, it doesn't necessarily mean that funding, the toll funding is protected, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the Special Transportation Fund funds are protected. So I think it's important when we talk about tolls to have that conversation as well. That will be on the ballot this November, constitutional amendment for a lockbox. So that's just as important when you talk about tolls, just as important as having that discussion to ensure that these funds are protected too and not swept into the general.
Anyone else? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.